to talk about it. But here's the most unbelievable news I have really just over the last few days, that 5,000 dead people, that was just 1 month. The number is closer to 186,000 deceased men and women and children in this country are receiving a check. Now, that is what we're really going to start clamping down on. 500,000 are getting 2. But here's the really stunning thing.
Imagine a morning when you wake up and realize that the food assistance funds your family relies on have suddenly been suspended, not because you are ineligible, but because of a data dispute between your state and the federal government. For more than 42 million Americans participating in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program known as SNAP, this concern is becoming more real than ever as recent reports point to massive loopholes in the management system leading to unprecedented scrutiny. The question now is not only how to protect taxpayer money from waste, but also how to ensure that those who truly need help do not become victims in the battle over data integrity. The overall picture of the food assistance program in the United States is going through a period of extreme tension. In the final months of 2025, the SNAP program, which is the nation's most important social safety net, has become the center of fierce political and legal debates. The situation heated up when the United States Department of Agriculture, known as the USDA, announced shocking figures regarding fraud and waste in the system. According to reports from November and December 2025, the federal government has begun taking strong measures to tighten the data management process for beneficiaries in the states. This creates a deep divide between the demand for transparency to prevent budget loss and concerns about privacy, as well as the ability of millions of low-income households to access food. Regarding the legal framework and the agencies directly responsible, the USDA, under the leadership of Secretary Brooke Rollins, is the leading unit in this reform effort. Current decisions are based on the legal foundation of Executive Order Number 14243, issued by the President, to eliminate information silos within the government apparatus. Specifically on May 6, 2025, and the update on July 24, 2025. The Food and Nutrition Service under the USDA, known as FNS, issued updated guidance on SNAP data sharing. Ms. Gina Brand, Senior Policy Advisor on Integrity at the USDA, emphasized that states must transfer detailed identification data of recipients, including Social Security numbers, dates of birth, and addresses as a mandatory requirement to establish the National SNAP Information Database. The final deadline for states to complete the submission of historical data from 2020 was set for July 30, 2025. Accurate content from government sources and mainstream media shows that the scale of the problem is much larger than previous estimates. According to information from the AP News Agency and PBS News published on December 2, 2025, Secretary Brooke Rollins issued a stern warning that the federal government would consider withholding SNAP support funding for states led by the Democratic Party if they do not provide recipient data as requested. The reason given by the USDA is that through the initial data cross-checking process in the states that cooperated, they discovered up to 186,000 deceased people who still had names on the list to receive benefits. Additionally, about 500,000 other people were found to be receiving benefits at the same time in multiple different states. This is specific evidence that the USDA uses to argue that the current system is being exploited and needs a total overhaul to protect the pockets of taxpayers. Going deeper into specific data and figures, we see an alarming financial reality. According to an article on Fox News on November 14, 2025, Secretary Rollins declared SNAP to be one of the most corrupt and dysfunctional programs in American history. Since the new administration implemented strict audit measures, about 700,000 people have been removed from the program due to ineligibility or misinformation. Authorities have also made 118 arrests related to EBT card fraud. Meanwhile, a report from the AP news agency in mid-December 2025 cited Ms. Jennifer Tiller, a senior advisor to the USDA, estimating that the total amount of waste and fraud in the program could be as high as $9 billion USD per year. This figure includes both administrative errors and intentional fraudulent acts from users, as well as transnational criminal organizations. However, the problem lies not only with the beneficiaries, but also in the technological infrastructure of the system. A key report from the United States Government Accountability Office, known as the GAO, published on September 25, 2025, pointed out another aspect of the loss. The GAO said more than $320 million USD in SNAP benefits were stolen through skimming, which is when criminals use data copying devices at stores. The main cause is that most EBT cards today still use old magnetic strips, lacking the security microchips that have become standard on commercial bank cards. With a huge budget of about $96 billion USD for fiscal year 2025 to support more than 43 million people, every percentage of loss is equivalent to billions of dollars that could have helped those truly in need. From a multidisciplinary perspective, changes in the SNAP program have far-reaching impacts on the entire economy and society. In macroeconomic terms, the reduction or suspension of SNAP funding in states not only affects consumer purchasing power, but also directly impacts the revenue of food retailers and the agricultural supply chain. The federal budget is under pressure to cut costs while still ensuring national food security. In terms of public health, any disruption in receiving benefits can lead to increased rates of hunger, poverty, and diseases related to poor nutrition, especially in children. In the labor market, new regulations on work requirements tied to SNAP benefits are also creating changes in the way low-income and part-time workers access employment. The views and debates surrounding this issue are currently very intense and clearly polarized. Supporters of the USDA policy argue that requesting data is a necessary step to restore order and ensure fairness. They argue that a system that allows nearly 200,000 deceased people to still receive money is a failed system. Conversely, the governments of states like California or New York and poverty advocacy groups have expressed deep concern. They argue that requiring the sharing of sensitive data, including immigration status, could make many legal residents feel afraid and leave the program on their own. They also accuse the federal government of using the fraud issue as a political excuse to drastically cut social welfare spending. This debate is not just about numbers, but is a battle over national governance views between federal power and state autonomy. For those who directly benefit, these changes bring a sense of insecurity and many difficulties in daily life. Low-income groups and households with children are the most vulnerable to the risks of funding cuts. The elderly and people with disabilities, who often have difficulty updating complex administrative procedures, are also at risk of being excluded from the list if states cannot resolve data conflicts with the federal government. The discovery of fraud cases, such as the case of a USDA employee in New York, taking bribes to illegally register EBT card readers processing more than 30 million USD, further increases the stigma against those who truly need support, while making the already strict approval process even slower and more difficult. Regarding the upcoming schedule, residents and state governments should pay special attention to important milestones. Although the initial data submission deadline of late July 2025 has passed, negotiations and threats of funding cuts are still ongoing in the final months of the year. The USDA is expected to continue publishing more detailed audit reports from the National SNAP Information Database in early 2026. This will be the deciding moment whether states face real financial sanctions. In addition, lawsuits from states opposing the data sharing requirement could soon be brought to federal court, creating a long legal path that needs to be closely monitored. In summary, the current fluctuations in the SNAP program are not just an issue of administrative management, but a comprehensive test of the effectiveness of the American social safety net. The discovery of hundreds of thousands of cases of deceased people still receiving benefits and billion-dollar fraud figures is a wake-up call about the need to modernize the system. However, the biggest challenge now is how to implement these reforms without causing unnecessary harm to millions of honest, poor people. In the coming time, monitoring the responses from the USDA and the results of the data reconciliation will be the key to understanding the future of food security in the United States.